Alright guys, I'm going to be walking you through the steps on how to restore your 80s Arctic Cat fuel gauge. Now this one was pretty bad. This is the lens. As you can see, I already took the whole thing apart. So when you take this gas gauge apart, you will find, obviously the lens. You have your top piece here. If you want, you could repaint this just black or whatever color you want, I guess. But for this purpose, we're just going to leave it and we'll use some armor roll and shine it up. Then you're going to find your actual measurement piece here that shows you how full it is. And then on top of that, well, behind that, right there, you're going to find this little piece, which most of the time you can reuse it, but this one was so bad that this one got all yellowed. So we're going to be cutting a new one out of this. So after you've taken your gauge apart, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get a piece of plexiglass. This is out of an old lawnmower bagger. So I think this will clean up fine with some glass cleaner. But we're trying to do this as cheap as possible. Now, if you don't have any of this stuff laying around, or you don't want to use older stuff, you can go to Lowe's or your local hardware store, and they should have some, and they can hook you up with a piece. Now, this piece is not too thick. You don't want it super thick, or you don't want it super thin, because it obviously won't work right. The tools you're going to want to use is a Dremel with a little cutoff blade on it. This one just happens to be a diamond blade. This one actually comes from Harbor Freight. It's actually half decent, surprisingly, from Harbor Freight. And then you're also going to need a number 2 Phillips screwdriver to take your gas gauge apart in the first place. And then, optional but not required, you can trace it out with a Sharpie marker, or you could use vice grips. And this is to hold your old piece on there, so when you take your Dremel, you can just cut around it. And then to attach this to the thing, the stock one screws on, but we're actually just going to hot glue it on and possibly take a soldering iron and melt it together, because to be able to get this perfectly so we can screw it back on, actually takes a decent amount of skill, unless you want to melt some stuff and make a mold somehow, because this, you're going to have to make these raised. So it's going to take a decent amount of time to make it like that, so we're just going to glue it on, and it's never failed me before. Hot glue, I think, works the best for sealing, but you can use RTV. That also works for sealing. It just doesn't hold the plastic, so you'll have to figure out some way else to attach it. First step, if you're going to be remaking one of these, a lot of times your gas gauge one will be fine, but this one is just so bad that it's yellowed. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to set it on your piece of plexiglass, and you're going to want to trace it out with your Sharpie, or you could use your vice grip and just hold it there, and then cut it out like that. But I prefer the Sharpie. My Sharpie was kind of dried up, but we can still see it. I prefer the Sharpie because our vice grip, if you have a nice new piece, will scratch your plexiglass. Alright guys, so I figured out that this piece of plexiglass was too thick. This is my first time actually ever making a new one of this, and I should have noticed that. That was my fault, but if you guys do this, take note that get a piece of this if you're going to have to make a new one. So you might want to take your gauge apart if you don't have plexiglass on hand, and see if you're going to need to make a new one, because I've had a few that I got away without it, but this is my first one where I'm going to have to actually make a new one. So I found this thin piece of plastic. It's like a box. Carburetor parts came in this one. So we're going to take this one apart and we're going to cut this out and be able to put it in there, so it'll actually fit right. Alright guys, so you can see we got our new piece in there. I think it looks pretty good. So I'm going to take this piece back out and clean it up with some glass cleaner, just so you can see my fingerprints are in there, so I'm going to get this as clear as possible. Next step is to trace out our main lens, because I cleaned that one up. So this is our main lens, the broken one that typically you see first. So I'm going to trace this one out on our piece of plexiglass here and cut it out with the Dremel. Alright, so there you guys can see I just cut it out in a circle. I suppose if you had a bandsaw you could actually cut it much nicer, but you can see it fits right in there. As I already mentioned, we're not going to be able to actually use these screws. So that's going to look pretty good, especially once we clean it up, get all those fingerprints off. And so next, I'm just going to take soldering iron and just push down on it and try to melt this all to one. You don't want to melt too far into the black, but just want to melt this plexiglass down into there, and then later we'll come with the hot glue gun and just glue that up and make it nice and waterproof. Another thing is, you probably do not want to use a real good soldering iron. So I just got this cheap Harbor Freight thing. This is like $2 or something like that. So all we're gonna do is just gonna push down on it, melt these two together, and then we're gonna take a hot glue and glue it up. Got done melting it. This just gives it a little bit more rigidity. The hot glue is really just gonna sink down and hold this thing. But as you can see there, I got a little bit close there, but it's no big deal. We might even be able to clear some of that up because some of it's just excess. We might be able to take a razor blade or something, just clean some of that up there a little bit. But that secures it a bit, and then you can use your hot glue, and that'll really secure it good. Because this secures it, but the hot glue will definitely secure it better than probably this. But this also helps a lot, especially when you're hot gluing. I'd say this would be like a tack weld, and then the hot glue would be like your final weld. Glued it, and what you want to do here is you just want to get a good seal, fill it pretty far with glue there, so that way you'll get a nice waterproof seal there, so water should not be able to get in there. Hot glue will seal it up good, so then that'll make it decently strong. It's probably not going to be as strong as factory, but it'll be good enough, because you're not going to be pounding on that, hopefully. And if you are pounding on it, you should be expecting it to break anyway, because why would you be pounding on it? So when this hot glue finishes curing up in a few minutes here, we'll be able to put it all back together and see what it looks like. Alright guys, so as you can see, we got the lens back on, and it is all screwed on at the 4 screws. Now when you're tightening these up, you want to go kind of in a star kind of a star pattern. I know it's only 4, but don't want to go just all around in a circle. You want to go like this one, that one, that one, that one, or so. You just don't want to go around in a circle because you get an uneven tighten there. And then when you finish all of them, you should go around again, because I'm sure that some of them are going to be more loose as the glue compresses there, to get a nice seal there. But as you can see, we got the new lens in there, and there you can see the needle that will move when the float goes up for more fuel. So our fuel gauge does work good now, and that is how you restore a fuel gauge in probably less than 30 minutes. Now I've done this a few times now, but anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. You can probably get it done in 15 if you're really quick and not recording a video, but there you go. You can see it is as simple as that, and you get pretty good results. Now if you can see there, you can see where we pushed it down to the soldering iron, but looking straight on, you can barely see it, and it doesn't really bother me too much. So for free, again, this is all free. All the materials I used, all free. I think it looks pretty darn good. Also, one more thing, if your gauge is if your needle in there is not really bright red anymore, you can paint that while you have it apart. But this one was pretty good. They usually are. So this gauge is good for the 1986 Arctic Cat Cougar. There you go. You can see it is all on the Cougar now, on the fuel tank. And this one actually looks really good from it. It looks pretty close to new, actually, other than our little bit of plastic there, but looks pretty darn good for free, I think. So thanks for watching, and make sure to stay tuned on our snowmobile videos and all kinds of stuff. Anything with the motor, we do it.